Hello, Nate.
Sean, how we doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing fine. How are you, bro?
You know, another Wicked Wednesday, second installment today. Earlier, Christina Bloom had on my good friends, and I'm actually repping them right now. Everything vaguely paranormal,
Yeah.
and amazing people. I hate the fact that I missed the conversation, but I'm gonna go back and watch it. I know that I can find it online. So, but how'd your show go last week? With Jeremy Cotter, wasn't it?
Oh, it was awesome. We went about an hour and a half. We talked a little bit about the paranormal. We talked about his wrestling and a little bit of comics here and there. We might even have him back on and talk about some of the stuff we both collect because we do have a lot in common.
The one thing I've never understood, I know Jeremy does collect a lot of things. I've never understood the Funko Pop thing. Like I get it, they're cute, they're but they take up a lot of space.
I actually got about 10 of them, chosen ones that I like Stone Cold and Tomb Raider and Megan from the horror shows. I've
Nice.
got her and a couple others, but I've
I
got some
mean,
oddball ones.
I can't say anything because if I ever came across a Mothman Funko Pop, that's coming home with me.
Actually, you can have custom Funko Pops made of yourself.
No one wants that. No one wants to roll over, look in their Funko Pop collection, and be like, "The fuck is that?"
Well, I mean, we are paranormal investigators. It'd be cool to have a collectible of us. It'd be
It
kind of
would.
neat.
It would. I just don't think that the people that know who I am would want to wake up and look at that every morning.
I don't know. It'd be fun to have because just the fact that you know each other.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, obviously this is not Gwen tonight. I keep forgetting my camera's on that side. This is not Gwen tonight, but we got Sean standing in for Gwen. Gwen recently had a shoulder surgery done, so she's
Yep.
in recovery. We wish her a speedy recovery.
Yep, we do. And also, we want to make a big shout out to Rez. He
Yes, as
went in
well.
today, and Shane McLean. He's kind of under the weather as well, and we hope that they all get better soon.
What is going on with the network right now? I got the infection in my mouth. Gwen has shoulder surgery. Shane's under the weather. Rez went to the hospital. Like, what is going on with the network at the moment?
I have no idea. I just actually got done with Reg's show last night too, and I was talking to him last night, and it seemed perfectly fine. But I
Yeah,
guess,
no, I tuned into the show.
yeah. And by this morning, he was under the weather, and he was heading to the hospital too. So I don't know.
Um, maybe someone's spreading some bad juju.
Well, I hope not. I
I hope
mean,
not. I doubt that. By the way, though.
if not, we can all sit back and we'll take care of it later.
Fair, fair. But tonight we have an amazing show lined up. I've been looking forward to this show since I booked it several months ago. So tonight we have on the founder of Paranormal Detectives LLC, and his name is Josh Chires, and he has been in the paranormal for quite some time. And even if you don't know who he is because you don't follow him, or after this show, I promise you, you will. You will follow him. But and that's me kind of putting you into a trance there. You will go. You will follow. But no, he seems like an amazing conversationalist. It's going to be a great show, and we have a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Unveiled family, Josh Chairs.
Here we go.
Hello, Nate. How are you?
Doing well, brother. How are you?
Good, thank you. I am so excited to be here tonight, and it's a pleasure and an honor. And I'm looking forward to answering any questions from your end and from your listeners' end.
Yeah, everyone out there in the chat. I mean, please chime in with questions. Whenever one of us gets a break in talking, we will post the questions where we will address them. So first and foremost, I always start off my podcast with the typical question that I'm sure that you're used to. What got you involved in the paranormal to begin with? I know that you went on your, I guess we would say technically first investigation in 2002, correct?
Yes, and I basically originally got my start in the paranormal field. Basically, back in the day, back when I was a 3-year-old kid in like 1988, there was this episode called "The Haunting of the General Wayne Inn" on Unsolved Mysteries of Robert Stack, and
Oh, I know that
um,
episode.
Yep.
and it was very well known. It was like season one, episode 4 or 5, it was in '87, and it covered this old English coaching inn that was founded as Steeper's Tavern in 1704. it was named after Revolutionary War hero Major General Anthony Wayne. And the episode covered a lot of the history of the inn. It covered about Hessian soldiers being seen all over the inn. It also covered how some of the women also had supposedly they would be drinking at the bar area, and all of a sudden they would feel like a little hand, little tickle or a little thing coming up their necks. And all of a sudden they thought their husbands had did it, and it wasn't their husbands. And it also covered supposedly a car was outside the venue, and it supposedly was locked and also completely bolted shut, and the car was starting by itself and the lights were on. All kinds of ghostly phenomena. So that episode really got my start in the supernatural. And then after that, I started watching every episode of In Search of by Leonard Nimoy. That show
Great
really
show.
kind of fascinated me in the paranormal, because I know Adam Nimoy, his son, and Adam has been a longtime friend and colleague, and I know he looks exactly like his dad. And of course, reading, of course, watching Ghostbusters too. I mean, who wasn't a Ghostbusters kid growing up in the late '80s,
Yeah.
early
It had to
'90s?
be.
You know, I know I was, and I'm sure a lot of other people were. And the funny thing is, the Ghostbusters TV series and movies franchise that we know actually was developed from investigations by Hans Holzer, who is pretty
Yes.
much the OG. I like to call him the OG of the paranormal, because Hans Holzer is the one that pretty much invented ghost hunting as we know it. And of course, I used to read every book by Hans Holzer back in the '90s. So I gained like an encyclopedic knowledge of different cases and stuff that he had investigated, and then and started getting a really great understanding of everything that he did, because he really was a pioneer along with the Warrens. And the Warrens were, of course, amazing too. Ed and Lorraine had did so many cases over the years, investigating, like, the Conjuring House, and investigating
Mhm.
just so many different places. And so they were ahead of their time doing what they did. And then in 1993, I watched a NBC program called The Other Side, and I saw this lady named on there being Linda Moulton Howe. And Linda, of course, ended up being a co-host on a show called Dreamland with Art Bell. And one night I turned on the AM dial, and I started pulling up. I started hearing this mysterious voice on AM radio saying, "This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell," and hearing this first interview with Al Bielek about the Philadelphia experiment. And I was immediately drawn into the world of exploration. And I started listening to Art around 93, 94, here and talk to him about, Area 51 with Bob Lazar, and, of course, different like time travel with Madman Markham, and just the exploration and ideas and stuff that he had did, really taking our field and kind of putting it out there in front of a national level. It was pretty amazing what Art did back in those days. And then, so as we got deeper into the '90s, there was a show called Most Haunted with Yvette Fielding and Carl Beatty, and it
Yep.
really was the original OG paranormal TV show before Ghost Hunters, before Ghost Adventures, because they were the first to really explore like English castles and old, in Scotland and Ireland, and investigate the Tower of London. I mean, they did it before even Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures had came out. So I was really drawn to that show. And then I did my first paranormal investigation in 2002 at the General Wayne Inn in Marion Station, Pennsylvania. And in the basement area, there's supposedly people seeing a Hessian soldier named Wilhelm from the American Revolution, who supposedly died in the basement of the General Wayne Inn sometime in the 1776, 1777. He was a part of Colonel Rahl's regiment that was attacked by George Washington on the Delaware. So when I had taken some digital camera images, back in those days, mind you, ghost hunting equipment is not like it was now.
No.
You might have had like dowsing rods, you might have had an EMF meter, maybe a flashlight, a tape recorder, and maybe a couple more pieces, but you didn't have like SLS cameras and ghost boxes and thermometers. I mean, you didn't have like all these fancy gadgets like lighted dowsing rods that you have now. You might have had just maybe a Geiger counter if you're lucky, or a radiation detector, but you didn't
Yeah,
have a
and
lot.
if you had a Geiger counter, you paid decent money for it back
Oh
then.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And that's how it was back then. But the amazing thing was, in the basement area, I took 3 consecutive photos. On the third photo, there was these really weird green and yellow streaks of light, and I still have no reasonable explanation why they popped up on camera, from these, green and yellow streaks of light. And then what I ended up doing was I started right around 2004. I went to Westchester University, started studying business management in college. There was these plumbers from Roto-Rooter who started coming out on TV, the Ghost Hunters, and they were pretty amazing. Jason Haas and Grant Wilson are longtime friends of mine. I've known them for years. Wonderful, wonderful guys. They're the most coolest down to earth guys you'll ever meet. And Jason and Grant were really pioneers because they had their day job. But one thing I loved about watching Ghost Hunters was they didn't believe every client's claims of activity. They wanted to disprove it first by looking at, like, maybe, for example, if there's a microwave that's going on, they would debunk it and try to figure out, okay, maybe the high EMF readings that the person's hallucinating and seeing is determined by a microwave or electrical appliance in their kitchen, or if there's a leaky faucet that's turning on by itself, they're thinking it's a ghost. They could go in as plumbers and try to tighten the knob or whatever and try to figure out, could be a bad pipe. So that was really good about them being plumbers. They could, look inside the walls and like try to figure out, maybe there's something, a pipe bursted and caused making a noise, a hissing sound of some type that can be explained naturally. But that's what I loved about the Ghost Hunters. So I think when they started doing it, they really kind of pushed it far. And of course, in 2007, Paranormal State came out on TV with Ryan Buell, Heather Taddy, and Katrina Weidman. And I love their style show because it was different than Ghost Hunters, because their TV show was more based on the experience of the clients, how the clients are in the interview process with the clients, and then the reveal process, and like helping kids and helping families. That was what PRS was all about in the early days with Ryan Buell, is helping families. And that's what kind of brought the emotional side of the clients. And that was what's I loved about the students from Penn State, like Elfie Music. And I have Elfie's assistant, Holly Falst, on my team, who was Ryan Buell's right-hand person. And so basically, she was always fascinating. So Paranormal State came out, of course, Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans and Aaron Goodwin was another one that really kind of drew my interest, because Bagans and Goodwin, got their start at the Bobby Mackey's Music Room. I remember watching the first episode in 2008, and they were there and they experienced a lot of different things that was going on. So I was really hooked immediately on Ghost Adventures too. And all these TV shows, I would say, without them, like, none of us in the field would be doing what we're doing today, because there wouldn't be as many teams out there without all these, the original people who did it.
I agree with that 100%. No, I can't tell you as far as Ghost Adventure goes. Once Nick Groff left, I feel like the show kind of went downhill. That's my own personal opinion. I feel like the OG Ghost Hunters, I love that show. I founded my first team in 2006, so I've been doing this for quite a while. I founded my second team in 2016. I still run both of them. One of them is in Alabama. One of them is here in New Hampshire, where I currently reside. And I can tell you that, like, the TV shows, do they give you the correct, I guess you could say, direction to go? If you watch the correct ones, yes. Are they always correct in the methods that they do things? No. Right. And I think that people take the TV shows completely to heart, and they get the misconception that you have to follow the TV shows exact. You can't take the TV shows that way. You can make up your own way of doing things, and it's okay. You have to experiment.
Exactly. And I wanted to say one thing. A lot of these TV shows, there's nothing wrong with watching them. I look at them as more as like WWE entertainment. Like, they are what they are, not like, I mean, do I think that half the experience that people expect of real legit evidence? Yes, absolutely. But there's also another side saying, like, you did it to him, now do it to me. That kind of approach of, like, that's like getting ratings and money. So a lot of it is also that WWE aspect. There's scripts involved. There's, actors, they're working off, they're just entertaining the people who are watching the shows. So I think there's that 50% that legitimately they get real evidence, but there's also 50% they have to entertain the crowd.
Yeah, because you got to look at it this way. They go into a location, and typically when they're filming, they're probably in the actual location for about 20 hours. 10 hours one day, 10 hours the next. Yeah. And you're breaking down 20 hours of footage into an hour show.
Exactly. And you're missing out a lot, because you have to kind of show the client interviews. You got to show the reveal process. You got to show that doing the walkthrough. I mean, there's a lot that goes into, you're missing out on a lot of stuff like that, is cut out of the original initial investigation. So you only get like the highlights and the snippets. Like, we see life in snapshots, and you're only seeing snapshots of what they actually filmed for that episode.
Correct. And going back to what you said earlier about Dr. Hans Halser. So Dr. Hans Halser was one of my favorite people in the paranormal. The first book that I ever bought, and I was completely unprepared for it, was Ghosts by Hans Halser.
Oh
And
yeah, I remember that one.
you're looking at like an almost 1,200 page book in 8-point font. It's so difficult to read, but it's so amazing. And the way that he theorized that poltergeist activity was caused by people that were going through puberty that had pent up emotions that they did not properly know how to deal with through his research. I
Yes.
I feel like that was a fascinating aspect because in 80%, I think it was 80 to 85% of the cases that he studied that had poltergeist style activity, as far as movement of objects, the formulation of circular puddles of water, and all this other weird stuff that happens with poltergeist stuff, he realized that there was an adolescent teenager in the building that would be hitting about the age of puberty. And then as soon as they would be at that age where they would be over it, the activity would stop.
Exactly. That's so true. And it's funny you mention it too, because Dr. William Roll, who was another parapsychologist, had also similar experiences that had Hans Holzer had said, and they pretty much knew each other very well. And Dr. Roll also had concluded that adolescents were also responsible for like the poltergeist activity, like throwing things around, moving things. A lot of that can be attributed to like maybe a kid that's just like has like 12 or 13 are still developing, their bodies. They're going through changes in their bodies.
Right. And so for me, we're going to circle back to that maybe a little bit later if we have time. I did not realize we've already been almost 20 minutes now. That's insane.
Oh
But
yeah.
that is crazy. But going back to the television shows, one of my favorites, obviously the OG Ghost Hunters. I obviously, I loved Unsolved Mysteries. Sometimes I hear his voice in my head, Robert Stat, like the way he
Hmm.
talks. It's like I'm walking through a location, I can see myself narrating it in his voice. And I'm like, I shouldn't be doing that. Don't do that. I did love In Search Of, but one of my favorites was, it's kind of not really obscure, but I don't think it was very well receptive for what it was for its time. I used to love MTV's Fear.
Oh yes, I heard about that show. I've never had a chance to watch it, but I know it was kind of like, along with In Search of and Unsolved Mysteries, kind of like one of those shows that helped pioneer it and help propel our field forward. Like it helped give it a lot of exposure. And I think that it was where they would go to like the different locations and kind of like fear of like staying in like a haunted location and like seeing how it would impact them.
Right. So what they would do is they would take people that had no experience doing anything in the paranormal, give them body cameras, and send them into the most haunted locations in the world.
Wow. I would have to check that out because I know, for example, Destination Fear. I know Dakota will.
Oh,
They do a lot of those kind of things where they just go to random locations similar to what you I think I believe that I heard Dakota Ladden talk about that with Chelsea for his sister about the show Fear was a major influence to their what they do.
I definitely think you should check the show out. Obviously, it probably hasn't aged well for its time, but I don't think you'd be disappointed. But we're going to
Awesome.
fast forward from 2002 when you had your first investigation, and now we're going to jump into the very interesting part of this conversation, which I know you're kind of itching to get to. 2014, you
Yes.
co-founded the let me find my notes here, Summerwind Restoration Society with Craig, is it Neering?
Yes.
Who is a paranormal investigator out of Wisconsin, for the record.
Yes, sir.
So you co-founded the Summerwind Restoration Society with Craig Neering.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that project and what that entails?
Sure. The Summerwind Restoration Society is, of course, let's go back to the history of Summerwind to the
Yes,
beginning.
please.
So Summerwind Mansion was founded by a guy named John Frank in 1914. He was a carpenter from Akron, Ohio. In 1913, he moved up to the upper UP of Michigan and created a fishing lodge called West Bay Lake Fishing Lodge. And you could actually stay there for $4.99 a night in this fishing lodge, and of course catch fish as well as stay. It was like it was a bed and breakfast, and
Four
the
ninety
West Bay
nine a
Lake.
night. I wish we could do that these days.
Yes, absolutely. Instead of paying like $200 a night,
Yeah, no
Sorry,
doubt.
didn't mean to interrupt. I just had to say that.
yeah, good point. So, Mr. Frank actually said what he did was he sold the property 2 years later to a guy named Robert Patterson Lamont. Mr. Lamont, of course, was a bigwig in Washington and he actually was somebody that was very well known. He actually was a future U.S. Secretary of Commerce under President Herbert Hoover. So he was like, a cabinet member of Herbert Hoover's later in the 20s. But in 1916, he bought the property from Mr. Frank. And then what he did was he employed two architects, Thomas Talmadge and Vernon Watson. I actually own the original blueprints to Summerwind that I purchased from Ray Von Bober, and we'll get to that Hinshaw story in a couple minutes here. But so what happened was Mr. Lamont, when he bought the mansion, he had it expanded. So he had had a servant's house built onto it. He had a playhouse, also a house for children, for the children to stay in. So he added all these additional buildings on the property. So what happened was in 1920s, the servants would tell him, "Hey, Mr. Lamont, the house is haunted," and then he would tell the servants, "Hey, grow up. There's no such thing as ghosts." And mind you, then after that happened, supposedly it's rumored that U.S. Presidents Warren G. Harding and Calvin Coolidge, the two presidents before Hoover, it's rumored that they actually stayed at Mr. Lamont's mansion back in the 1920s. And of course, supposedly Mr. Lamont had seen a floating lady in the kitchen area in Summerwind. So what happened was a years, about 10 years later, in 1935. So this is like fast forward to 1935, 34. It's the Depression. It's times are tough. Everyone's down on their luck. But Mr. Lamont was eating dessert with his wife in Wisconsin, and supposedly the basement door flew open, revealing the ghostly form of a man. So supposedly, there was a ghost that Mr. Lamont had seen. It flew open. He took his black powder gun, pow pow, fired two shots, thus missing the ghost, fled the mansion, and never returned. So what happened was Mr. Patterson Lamont, if actually he named it Summer Wind after there was supposedly it was actually called Lilac Hills at that time, because when the Lamonts had called it Lilac Hills, there was a lot of lilac trees on the property. So that explains why it was called Lilac Hills. So what happened was he died in 1948, and then a lady named Miss Lillian Kiefer. Miss Kiefer bought the property in 1948 from the estate of Mr. Lamont. So she bought it, and it would basically lease out. So she would have it for 20 years. Different owners would have it, and it would always come back to her. Like they always would rent it, and then maybe 3 or 4 years later, it would come back to her. So it kept rotating owners from 1948 to 1968, and then in the summer of 1969, the Hinshaw family moved in, and this was like the Brady Bunch family. You had Ginger Hinshaw, who had 3 kids. I know April, the 10-year-old girl, basically April Douglas. And this show was, mind you, this Summerwind episode was featured on season 1, episode 5 of A Haunting. So this was covered on A Haunting. Yes. And so when the Hinshaws moved in, of course, Arnold, of course, was a construction worker. He had 3 kids of his own. So basically, when the family moved in, they had to have the place. They thought it was the perfect fixer-upper for them to live all together and be happily here. So they started doing renovations to the place. And mind you, Summerwind was the first property to have steam heat, electricity. It was also one of the first places to actually also have running water and just things that modern conveniences that we didn't have back in those times. So it was one of the first real things to have it. So supposedly the Hinshaws moved in the summer of 1969. And what happened was supposedly the windows would fly open on their own. That's according to the actual thing we're going to dive into. Supposedly the windows would fly open on their own. They had to nail the windows shut. And supposedly the Hinshaws had to nail the windows shut. That was a phenomenon that was going on. They would hear muffled voices, flickering shadows in different parts of the rooms. And supposedly there's even a story of Mr. Hinshaw's car catching on fire. For some unexplained reason, and he was going to work one day, and all of a sudden the car caught on fire. And what happened
That's no good.
was a couple weeks later, supposedly Mr. Hinshaw had supposedly went and saw this crawl space. He saw this crawl space in one of the bedrooms. So basically what he did was he couldn't fit in the crawl space because he was too big. So he sent his 10-year-old daughter, April Douglas. April went ahead, who was Ginger's daughter, and that was Arnold's stepdaughter. So he sent her in there to investigate like this. There was supposedly they found a skeleton there with black hair. And what's interesting was they went to report the skeleton to the local Land O'Lake, Wisconsin police. And supposedly after they had went to the police came and they found nothing was there. And what happened was as soon as they saw the skeleton with black hair, things started taking it worse at Summerwind. What happened was supposedly it says that the Arnold Henshaw supposedly went mad. He started playing the organ. There was an organ inside the house, like a Wurlitzer or a Hammond organ or something like that inside the house. And supposedly he claims the spirits were claiming for him to play the organ to all hours of the night. And the family was so terrified that they actually had to play the organ. They actually had to stay in one room because they didn't want to. They were just terrified to be there. And mind you, what also was happening with the construction workers, supposedly they had tools disappear, so they would try to work on something, and the tools would just vanish into thin air when they were doing renovations. So I think the renovations combined with the fire was starting to stir up the activity in the mansion. So what happened was supposedly it's read that supposedly Mr. Henshaw had a mental breakdown. He was committed to a mental institution in Canada, was never seen again. And then, according to what I was told by Ray Von Bober, who since passed away in 2024, Ginger's brother, who I bought the original blueprints to Summerwind from, supposedly her, so basically he tried, she almost committed suicide too. So that's what's crazy about the place. And then the place went back to Miss Kiefer again around 70, 71. So what happened was Ginger's father, who was a popcorn vendor from Chicago named Ray Von Bober, Ray Von Bober Sr., Ginger's father, lived in 2005. He actually he passed away a little bit after the Summerwind episode aired on Discovery Channel of a haunting. And he was actually there. He recorded the episode. He was a popcorn bear and thought, hey, maybe I can make a go of this place again. It's the perfect fixer-upper for me and my son, Ray. So Ray Jr. was actually just got out of the Army. So he was like 23, 24 in the 70s. So he thought, hey, maybe the Bobers, who Ginger's father, could make a go of the place. And Ginger had pleaded with her father, don't buy this mansion, it's evil, and it's a place that'll drive you and Ray apart, and you don't want to buy this. She just pleaded with her father not to buy Summerwind, but he's like, no, I'm going to go through and buy it and try to rebuild this place. So basically, the Bobers ran into similar problems that the Henshaws did. They also had appliances breaking down. According to the book, there was actually a book I'll explain in a couple of minutes, and there was also supposedly they would measure blueprints. Also, they had the original blueprints that they got from Miss Kiefer, and Miss Kiefer supposedly gave them the blueprints. And when they measure rooms, it's according to this book that I was reading that I'm going to explain in a minute or two. Basically, the rooms were known to change shape. So supposedly the rooms were known to shift change, the shape and the feet and the length of the original blueprints. So what happened was a couple weeks later, supposedly Ray Jr. was inside the house, and supposedly he saw a vision of the gunshots inside the house. And then, of course, the Bobers left the place and abandoned Summerwind about 78, 79. So they kept it for like 8 or 9 years, but just they never stayed inside the house. They always stayed on a trailer out on the property, but they would never spend the night there. That's kind of interesting.
It is.
So when the Bober had it, and according to that, there was also a hypnosis session. Supposedly Ginger put her father and her brother under hypnosis, and during the one of the sessions, supposedly, I know Ray Jr. actually had the actual original tapes from the 70s or 80s. He would put his father under hypnosis, and supposedly he said that I'm Jonathan Carver, on this explorer from Weymouth, Massachusetts, and I'm looking for a northern third of this land grant. Supposedly there's a land grant buried inside someone, but there's no proof of that. And I've read Carver's journals back to back. So it's basically, hey, I had a dream that Jonathan Carver was here at this property, but according to the journals that Craig and I have read, he never met as far north as Land O'Lakes, but still, it's a good story for like press. And he wrote a book called The Carver Effect, a paranormal experience in 1979, just about the Henshaw, Bober experiences at Summerwind. And that book, A Carver Effect, is like going for like $300 now on Amazon. It's very hard to find and very expensive, but it goes through the entire story of Summerwind. Of course, the haunting episode covers all that too, and I'll make sure to include that link below for your listeners. You can find it right on like YouTube for free. And
it's a great episode.
Yes, it really is. And so what happened was, so the Miss Kiefer died in '85. So when she passed away, another couple from La Crosse, Wisconsin, named Harold and Babs Tracy, they thought they could make a go of Summerwind again, so they bought it around 85, 86. And Mr. Tracy bought it as a wedding anniversary present for Miss Tracy. What happened was supposedly they walked up to the mansion one night, and supposedly they had reported that the mansion was inhaling, almost like taking a life of its own. according like breathing almost when they were walking up one night on the property. And it's on Helen Creek Road in Land O'Lakes. And what happened supposedly was in 1988, sadly, there was lightning and fire took down Summerwind, struck it down, and all that remains today are the two tall chimneys, the foundation, and the steps. So the place was burned to the ground. But what I found out from Craig Nearing, who supposedly had interviewed this guy named Jim Lechner. Jim passed away about 5 or 6 years ago, but he told Craig before he died that the township of Land O'Lakes Township supposedly was responsible for the property being burnt down, and supposedly that the township didn't like people trespassing and vandalizing. So supposedly they said their fire department was going to be on site. The local Land O'Lakes firemen told them, "Hey, that we're going to be on site on this property on this night." And supposedly there it was. Supposedly the whole place was leveled by the township because they were tired of the trespassing and vandalizing. So where I come in 2014 is I watched the haunting episode. Okay, I said, you know what? I'm going to contact Ray Von Bober Jr., Ray's Ginger's brother. We become friends, and I buy the original blueprints to Summerwind. So I was thinking rebuild. So we have the blueprints. I can find, now all I had to do is find access to the property. So I saw this news feed of Summerwind, and I see a guy named Craig Nearing on the screen, and he said, call me. And what I do is we started talking and said, okay, we're going to rebuild Summerwind. We got the original blueprints. So Craig Nearing had access to the property. He was friends with Harold and Babs Tracy. So having him access to the property, me having the blueprints, and he did investigations on the property and was there with my late friend Kevin Malik, and basically was another supporting society for the Summerwind Restoration Society. So Craig and I's idea was, hey, maybe we can rebuild this place and hold campouts on the property on site and give people the opportunity to, come legally and not like illegally trespass on the property and, do benefits on the property. So we created the Summerwind Restoration Society in 2014. And it was very successful for a long time. A lot of people came out. We sold out every event. But what happened was around 2023, 2024, sadly, Craig stopped doing benefits because I believe Miss Tracy had passed away. And what I was told was Summerwind was sold. So I have not been able to contact the new owners of the property, but I would like to at least approach them that supposedly the place was sold and was going to be redeveloped. So I don't know whatever happened, but I still have the original engineering diagrams, as does Craig. So having those is kind of like a piece of paranormal history. I would like to eventually, have set them up for display and get them framed so people can see them. I think it'd be really cool to bring to like a Paracon and just to have people take pictures of them and all that. So they're really neat to have. They're like and I miss Summerwind. And sadly, we were working on trying to get a lot of interest on. I had contacted Jeff Belanger from Ghost Adventures, a longtime writer and researcher. He's worked with Zach Bagans. He did all the behind the scenes, the research of the haunted locations, the writing for each episode, all the historical stuff. Supposedly, Jeff was interested in 2017 of doing an updated version of the Summerwind story with supposedly, doing a TV series on it, which I think could still have great potential. If you could find the owners, if the new owners were interested of doing a TV series like This Old House meets Ghost Hunters, of rebuilding it and investigating it. Nobody's ever rebuilt a haunted house and turned it into a TV series. I think that would be interesting.
No, I think it would be because that would lead the question of if you built a house right to the original blueprints,
Yes.
considering the fact that the original house that was already haunted was destroyed, you rebuild the house and that house is still haunted. You have to kind of now ask yourself the question: is it the house itself, or is it the land?
Exactly.
That would be interesting, as in the fact, like you said, investigate the ground now before you put the house back up and see what happens.
Absolutely. And I can say that Craig's team has investigated there many times over the years where literally they would be investigating and like running a ghost box. And they would, some of the spirits there supposed to say, please rebuild Summerwind. And they also had rock throwing incidents where they would be investigating near the foundation and rocks would just come flying out of nowhere, out of the foundation. No reasonable explanation. And then supposedly he would take some of his team members and put them in isolation where they would do EVPs at different parts on the property. And one of them, supposedly, a raccoon falls into one of the girls' laps, and you can hear an EVP back that says, I pushed it. So
Hmm.
that happens a lot, and I do know that Summerwind, the area where it's been known to, it is actually known to have a lot of burial mounds on the property. So I think with those Native American spirits and the burial mounds has a lot to do with the activity at Summerwind.
I,
So
I got,
go ahead,
I got,
Sean.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
Since you got the blueprints at the house and they've done investigation on the land, is there any way to actually go to a section where the house was and investigate that little area of the land of where they've had activity that was in the house?
Oh yes, absolutely. And there's actually like inside where the house was, there's actually like inside the foundation, you still walk inside the original foundation, and there are parts you can actually there's arches where there's been a lot of activity, where supposedly people have picked up like there's different spirit box sessions. There's like these arches you can still get out of the rain, and these arches are still at Summerwind. Besides the two tall chimneys, the foundation, the steps, the arches are still there, and you can actually still like investigate those arches underneath there, and there's actually a lot of activity where people have seen shadow figures in there. In fact, the late Kevin Melick, who I used to know, who used to host Paraversal Universe Radio with his wife Jennifer Skelsey, supposedly they had picked up shadow figures inside those arches for world's largest ghost hunt in 2017.
Interesting.
Nice. So realistically, with the parts of the building that are still standing,
Yes.
if you understood the original layout, you could kind of formulate at least, I guess you could say, a hypothesis of
Yes.
where the other rooms would be sitting.
Yes. Yep.
That is amazing.
Just by looking at like the original blueprints, you could probably go walk inside the foundation, and Craig would probably know a lot about that stuff because he's been there multiple times. He's investigated there. I've never been to Wisconsin, but I can't say, but Craig has. And but I think if you probably brought the blueprints with you, you could probably like literally walk at like and know exactly looking at the blueprints where a certain room was or where
That is
the
cool.
the basement was or whatever.
Yeah.
And the good news is, like I said, I think the place has great potential. If you could just get the right backer and the right investor to buy, because that's what Craig and I were working on before the Tracys had passed away. Before the property was sold, was trying to get like an investor to actually like a business person that has money to actually come down and do a full scale rebuild. Because if you had the right people involved, and you could turn this to an entire like TV series, and you can show it like being built from episode to episode and investigate it after it's rebuilt, and then doing tours. It would draw a lot of money,
Dude,
and it could be.
It's a multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a television show of a historically haunted place being rebuilt from scratch from the ashes, right?
Yes.
Then once it's rebuilt, mind you, during that rebuild, because we all know how renovations affect activity.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure the activity is going to be ramped up. So you're going to have that in the show. And once it's rebuilt, not just do you have the television show that you're going to draw royalties on, you now have the opportunity to allow teams into that location, which is rebuilt to spec to the original house.
Blueprints. Exactly. And the cool thing is too, because mind you, building codes and stuff would have to be updated. There are parts of the blueprints that would need to be.
Sure.
Yeah, you would need to modify something. Craig's idea was to kind of, it would look the same outside. Like, for example, if you look at the new Yankee Stadium in baseball, I'm not a Yankees fan per se, but if you look at the exterior portions, it actually looks like the original 1923 one on the exterior, but on the inside, it's got a modern look. So you could formulate where it would look the same on the exterior, but inside you would have to modify it. And we were talking about doing like a bed and breakfast or a museum or something like that.
That would be cool.
To show that, to show all those portions. And I think a museum would be great. And then being able to show like the different rooms and maybe kind of build parts of the original exterior with a modern updated building codes with today's technology. I think it'd be really cool.
Right, like which obviously you wouldn't be able to run knob and tube lighting, with no one wants that fire hazard shit anyway.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to run that. You'd have to use modern electricity, modern plumbing.
Yeah.
I mean I don't know. I'd be down to see a privy or two around, just no plumbing, just go and do your thing. And I'm joking, by the way. No one wants that. It's horrible. But no, I think the actual ideal of it is amazing, because there like I said earlier, it's a multifaceted aspect that could not only generate revenue, but you're bringing back to life a historic building that is known to be one of the most haunted buildings in the United
Midwest.
States.
Yep. And mind you, in 1980, I think it's a 1980, November 1980 Time Life magazine with Walter Cronkite on the cover, they mentioned that Summerwind is one of the most haunted houses in the Midwest.
Yes.
That was something.
Yes. So to be able to restore that to its former glory, minus, minor upgrades due to building code and whatnot, but to be able to restore to its former glory from the blueprint is amazing.
That would be so cool. And I think I'm gonna try calling the Chamber of Commerce soon and find out who owns it. They might be able to give me information on who the new owners are, because if I could reach them, supposedly was told that they're not fans of the paranormal, but if I was to talk to them and say, hey, look, I have these blueprints, I'm willing to work with you guys. If you guys are willing to build it right from the original blueprints, I can help work on getting investors for the project. But I would need your support and backing, because they said it all starts with the owners. If the owners want to be able to resurrect the house, they would have to at least agree upon, if I supply the blueprints and I help with my media contacts and get interest going, calling news stations and such. If we're to do this, we have to do this the right way and do it through searching through local news outlets and stuff like that.
Correct. And then, so I guess my question there would be is if wouldn't the owner of the property be public record or?
Yes. Yep. I would assume you could probably look that up on a phone book or something, or maybe find it on some database and find it. You can always call the local township offices and see.
Right, like the town hall.
Yeah, courthouse.
Yeah.
So my next question, and we're going to fast forward now from Summerwind, which that is a fascinating story, by the way. Dude, you are encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to that place, and it makes me fucking jealous. Your knowledge of Summerwind is like, if I can reach it here, my knowledge of Medfield State Hospital in Medfield, Massachusetts.
Wow. You know it all, by reading that book and studied the history of that. You probably know everything about the history, the families that live there, the activity, the activity is, where all of the types of building, building part, what has been renovated with you. You probably know everything there's to know about that place.
I know everything there is to know about that place. I know of all the deaths. I know about the cemetery off site, and I have a list of every single grave number and who the graves names are. I know everything about that site. That's how I research.
That's amazing. That's like me with Summerwind. Same thing. We're similar in that aspect.
That's why I said you reminded me of that aspect. So I got to ask you, we're going to fast forward now to, I think it was 2020 when you officially founded Paranormal Detectives LLC.
Phantom Detectives LLC.
Phantom, sorry.
No problem. So actually, I would like to let's talk about that. How did I come up with the name? I love the name because it's really cool. I was reading this old 1930s to 1950s comic called The Phantom Detective. It was a very popular comic. And of course, watching Sherlock Holmes and Phantom of the Opera, I was like, you know what? Nobody's using this name for a paranormal team. It's a freaking awesome name. I had my own business cards, my own website built, my own social media pages. I own email, and I started doing investigations under that banner. And our first investigation was in December 2020 at the Sanderson Museum in Chadsford, PA.
I've heard of that place.
Yes, and supposedly the Chadsford Sanderson Museum was actually a pretty fascinating place. It was named after a guy named Christian Sanderson, who was he was like a musician. It was a radio show host, a poet, a writer, different things like that. And he also did a lot of square dances in the Chadsford, Philadelphia area. And supposedly he used to write to famous dignitaries. If you go inside the museum, you'll see letters from Helen Keller, Sitting Bull, Shirley Temple, just different people he had written to over the years. He was very famous in the Chadsford area. And we did our first investigation there in 2020. And this was right after I had the opportunity to train under Brian J. Cano from the show The Haunted Collector, who was with John Zaffis. And Brian and I have been friends for many years. And he trained me on how to do EVPs and how to do EMF sweeps and how to use the ghost box. It was a great session to learn from one of the masters in the field. And
Brian
we took that
seems
knowledge.
like such a good dude.
Yeah, he really is. And he's so kind. And Brian mentored me and gave me some advice that night. And we took that knowledge and we set up our first investigation there. And what's interesting was that night we did that first ever investigation with me and my former team member, Sasha, who has since left the team in late 2021. But in 2020, when she was with me, we set up a lot. We set up we set up an EMF meters. We set up security cameras, and we took digital camera pictures in this violin room. What was interesting was we had the security camera going off, the EMF meter batteries drained. At the same time, we caught this big orb, like with a multicolored orb. It just wasn't like a white orb that you would see like as dust or, this had a couple of multicolors inside of it. So I have no reasonable explanation. So when you have batteries being drained, when you have a security camera going off, and when you have your EMF, basically, and you see a color orb in a digital camera image, you got some kind of activity when you have multiple things that are going off all at once,
Correct. And for the
And
record, I just want to let you know, John, that is the first time in almost 85 episodes I've ever fucked up a team name.
it's all good. Hey, we're all human, that's for sure.
But the problem is, it's right there in front of me on the screen. So that's a little bit embarrassing for me, but shit happens. But so yeah, don't. When you're having all that activity go on, multicolored orbs, they're an interesting aspect.
Yes.
Because it's not like you're capturing, a semi-translucent orb that has a nucleus.
Right.
There's so many different theories when it comes to orbs, but when you start seeing colors within the orbs,
Yes.
I mean, could it be a refraction? It could be. But here's the thing: if you don't have a shiny surface that is representation of the colors that you're seeing within said orb, then you can
Yes.
kind of rule that out.
Absolutely, yes, because a lot of times you also got to be very careful, because the insects are flying around it, and when you're taking images, you also got to be careful of basically dust particles. But if you have a multicolored orb that has like different features, if you see a face inside your orb, that means you got some kind of spirit, partial body or full body apparition. So you just got to make sure by looking at things, that just comes with experience and looking at images
Yes.
and being able to enhance them, because when you enhance them, sometimes you can draw things out that you didn't see before.
I agree. It's like I'm a huge fan of, when I go on investigations, I still take my old school 35 millimeter film camera.
And that was funny because I remember watching an episode of the Holzer Files, and I think it was Dave Schrader. I love Dave Schrader. He's been a longtime friend of mine, and
He's
Shane
awesome.
Pittman, Cindy Kaza, really great people. And I have one of Cindy's students, Melissa, on my team. She's a student of Cindy. She's Melissa Ferrazzano and Rick Warner. But anyway, Shane, I remember when they did this one episode where they're investigating the Stone place. I think it was somewhere in like Massachusetts or something. And I think that Alexandra Holzer was actually there. She actually brought her father's old
That was
Polaroid
America
camera.
Stonehenge.
Yes, America Stonehenge. Yep.
In Salem, New Hampshire.
Yep. Yes. Yep. And they were there, and I think that they had took some photos, and of course Alexandria caught the shadow figure. And it's funny how sometimes some of the old school stuff from 50 years ago when Hans Holzer was using it, sometimes it's more effective than a ghost box.
Yes. Yes, and I have been to America Stonehenge multiple times. I live 35 minutes from America Stonehenge.
Amazing. So you're practically right there, literally right next to it.
Yeah, literally 35 minutes from America Stonehenge, 40 minutes from the Robert Frost farmstead.
Amazing.
There's such a great place. If you've never been and you're ever in this area, you definitely need to at least check it out. But yeah, it's weird how the old school equipment sometimes works better than the new school. I still bring my Polaroid camera, my ejecta film. I still bring my 35 millimeter camera. I have a camera that's a digital camera that still takes floppy disks for memory.
Wow. And hey, sometimes that stuff is better than new stuff, because a lot of this new stuff is very good, but it's also limited in what it can do.
Correct. So that leads me to my next question. Go ahead, Sean.
I said I agree, most definitely.
So that leads me to my next question. So after you founded Phantom Detectives LLC, do you consider your team more of a gadget-based investigative team, or do you consider you guys a little bit of an old school or a decent mix?
I think we're a decent mix because we use a lot of the, we believe in the old school methods of interviewing clients. We also believe in using, digital cameras. We also believe using Polaroid, but we also have the new school techniques of using like spirit boxes, SLS cameras, lighted dowsing rods. So we kind of take the old school and the new school, kind of put them together into one, and we have our own like uniform system of investigating that's really helped us become very well known in the field. So we like to take a combination of both the new school and the old school, and that's what's really cool, is coming up with things that take a lot from your different influences and taking different techniques from like Hans Holzer. We took some of the old Holzer techniques, but then we combined with the ghost hunters techniques and stuff.
I love it.
We just take a little bit of both new school and old school, and I think that's what the best approach is, finding things that you're interested in, investigation styles and techniques that you can improve upon and make your own versions of. That's what's cool. It's like taking a playbook and modifying it to how you do things. So I think the old school and the new school both work well for my team. And for some people, some teams like the old school, some people like the new school, some people like the combination. And for me, I find that the using both schools of thought are the best ways to do it.
I agree with that because I do love the combination. I have a 1977 Bell and Howell 8mm camera that I like to use. I also have a 1964 Brownie camera that was also put out by Bell and Howell that was used for news stations back in 1964. It's a long
Nice.
exposure camera, but you know what? Sometimes those long exposures are what you need as long as you don't let anyone walk in the frame.
I can't imagine that could have been a camera that could have captured the Beatles, as far as we know, because the Beatles were huge around '64. You know?
Who knows? I bought it at an estate sale for $2 and it works.
That's amazing. That's so cool, and you never know where that camera could have been.
No idea. So let me ask you, have you ever been to, in your travels, a location that had so much activity that it kind of made you nervous? Or have you ever had one of those spots where you're investigating what I like to call the oh shit moments? Like that just made you jump so bad that you're like, oh, I don't like this.
Oh yes, absolutely. In fact, some of the most amazing cases come from the residential cases, and we had this one case in November of 2022 where this family reached out to us through this website. They were so terrified because supposedly their kids would see like demonic figures in the basement area. And literally, we went into this house to help this client. This was right after we made the local news down in Delaware for the lightship overfalls, which was this lighthouse on a ship. And we got contacted 10 days later. We had the expedited investigation to help this family. And this family was seeing demonic figures down in this all over this house, and they were so terrified, similar to how the Hinshaw family was at Summerwind, where they stayed up in the upper part of the upper apartments, but they didn't stay much in the house. But when we had set up an investigation there, we had to literally bless ourselves, and we used basically the minute we went in there, we felt like someone was kind of bearing down on our chest. And I remember doing that investigation, literally we picked up multiple pieces of evidence. We got one that says, I want you to go. And we heard this demonic voice that I want you to go. We also had another one that said, F you. We got cussed at on this investigation. And I remember watching my team member, Rick Warner, who's not here today. He's the U.S. ambassador to the Italian UFO Federation. He's our UFO guy on the team.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll hook him up with you in the future. And he's also the lead. Anyway, I remember watching him. He was literally sitting in a chair, and I remember seeing his eyes were like completely like turned upside down, and you could see like someone like pressing down on his chest, and his EMF meter was spiking way up. And I said, Heavenly Father, I said the Lord's Prayer, those who trespass against us, lead us not. But once I said that, you can immediately see like the EMF meter, the EMF spikes drop, and like literally he was like, what's going on? And he was in a trance almost, and he was almost, he was almost like completely unconscious for like a minute or so until I said the Lord's Prayer. And so that was a very scary moment. And mind you, not only that, but when we were doing the SLS mapping, I've never seen this before, and I've never seen it since. We were using the old digital dowsing SLS camera. I love the old digital dowsing.
Oh, yes.
The best. There's only like 20 in existence, and we have one of the 20. And I know the original one, it actually started picking up black oil spills. I've never seen it before. And you could see this black oil spills like shape changing on the SLS. And mind you, these were against solid walls. You have to be very careful with the SLS, because if it can map like chandeliers, water bottles.
A lot of false mapping.
Yes, exactly. But if you use against solid walls, that's the best, your bread and butter, because those things, that there's not going to be any objects that could cause a false mapping. But I remember seeing this black oil spills all over the SLS, and I never could explain that. And that was like one of those oh shit moments, I would say, from my investigations, that, demonic cases, normally we don't do those. We let people like Dave Giuliano from the Ghost Hunter store, or like Bill Bean, people trained in those areas that usually handle those cases. But we can, offer people assistance to get them in touch with people like that, because Dave has been a longtime friend of mine. Like he's like one of my mentors in the field. Usually I let him kind of handle those cases. People have more experience, but we did do a demonic case. We just don't do them a lot.
No, that's fair. But let me tell you, that would be an oh shit moment for me too, because I know how SLS cameras work. I'm actually currently working on building my own. And,
really? Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I know it's a little bit of a process, but I finally got a laptop that does Windows operating system, and I've already downloaded the software, and now I just got to get all the gadgets to hook it all up. But
awesome.
So let me ask you, going back to real quick before I get to my final three questions, because I see we're down to about 2.5 minutes. We might run about 4 minutes over, Sean. Is that okay?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So when it goes back to residential cases, right? You have a lot of teams that are kind of like what I like to call pop-up teams. They just kind of come out of nowhere, right? They are trying their hardest to earn their credibility, but they take on cases that they shouldn't, especially when it's residential cases way early on in their career.
Yes.
Do you feel that novice teams need to kind of step back, and if they have a case they cannot handle, to call in people who have the more experience before they make things worse?
Absolutely, because a lot of times novice teams that are going into locations, you don't know basically if they might provoke something or they might like cause upset the spirits that cause a bigger reaction where eventually they might cause attachments or potentially might cause more problems for the homeowners because a lot of times these spirits, it's all about respect, and if you treat the spirits like it's their home or business, say please and thank you. We've noticed with that approach, it's better than if you did it to him, now do it to me, that kind of thing. So if you come with respect, you're going to get respect. So I think that novice teams are not equipped to handle, the high volume demonic cases. They should let the other teams that have more experience do them because a lot of times these novice teams are not properly prepared. They're not trained on the equipment and they really don't understand how to deal with using holy water or using how to properly burn sage. And I think that they need to take classes in demonology from people like Dave Giuliano. And Dave offers a wonderful book, I believe that he written in 2011 about how to handle these cases. Like people leave it to like the more experienced in teams and people like Bill Bean and Dave Giuliano and of course what's that name of that other guy? Bob Larson, people like that are demonologists. Father
Right.
Bob Bailey from Paranormal State.
I love Father Bob.
I love him. He's great. So people like that are equipped for that kind of stuff, those should be the ones that are doing those cases, not inexperienced teams, because inexperienced teams could mess things up and make it worse depending on the location.
Yeah, and my advice whenever a novice team contacts me is I say don't let fame cloud your judgment. Reach out to
Exactly.
people who have more experience
Most
because you're going
definitely.
to make it worse for the family.
Exactly, because it's all about we're in this to help each other and help families, and that's what it's all about. And I wanted to say, basically, that's how we do it. We do it through reaching out. It's all about para unity and working together.
Yes, and a lot of people out there don't believe in paranormal para unity. But I can tell you that's a conversation for the next show because I'm definitely going to have you back on.
Awesome.
I see we've got a little bit, we're right about at that where I think we're going to hit about 4 minutes over, which is what I was expecting. I'm a
You're
time
fine, man.
Nazi, if you don't know. So Josh, I end my podcast with 3 specific questions.
Yes.
Question number 1: you have one location that is on your bucket list that you have never been able to go to. Cost is not an option. Where are you going?
If cost wasn't an option, I would say Waverly Hills.
Waverly Hills. I like it.
Yep.
I've not gotten that answer before. So why?
Because it's got a lot of history to it. It's got a lot of activity, knowing it like from the ghost hunters. A lot of teams have been there, and everyone has different experiences at Waverly. Some people have seen full body apparitions. Some people have seen partial body apparitions. Some people have seen, shadows and footsteps, and also it's got amazing history that dates back to the 1800s, and a lot of death had happened there. So for me, it would be really interesting to go there and see what my team could experience.
Oh, and that weird creeper on the 3rd floor too.
Yes.
Yeah, the hell with that thing. So, all right. So, Josh, we're going to Waverly Hills. You can take one person with you. They can be alive or dead. They do not have to be involved in the paranormal. Who are you taking with you and why?
If it was at Waverly, probably Katrina. And the reason why is Katrina's been there multiple times. She knows that place better than anybody, and she's investigated there many times. And she's one of my mentors in the field who I look up to. And she knows like how all the active spots. She knows all the history there. And as not to mention, she's also interviewed over 1,000 people in her career, so she knows that place inside and out better. So for me, probably Katrina Wyman.
I like it. I like it. So we're going to Waverly Hills. We're taking Katrina. You can
Yes.
only bring one piece of paranormal equipment with you for this investigation with you and Katrina. What piece of equipment are you bringing and why?
Spirit box. Why not? We're hooked up with a portal box because I love you trying to pick up the spirit voices, and if you can use a basically a portal box and clean up the sound. You can try to get that clean up that white noise and try to communicate with the spirits and see what you pick up on the AM/FM sweeps.
I love it. I love it. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending a little bit over an hour with us.
Oh,
This
one
was
last thing I want to talk about before we
this,
go.
go ahead.
Sure, I want to talk about the Roswell wreckage. So I actually
Oh, yes.
let's quickly dive into that just for a second. I got some photos from Carl Richardson, who's Art Bell's brother-in-law. Irene Bell had sent him some actual arts parts. These are actual back in 1999. Art Bell talked about he had pieces of the Roswell wreckage. So these pieces are going to Linda Moulton Hell, the world-renowned UFO explorer, and she's going to be doing testing in a lab of these arts parts to see if they're real. And as soon as I get the results from Linda and Irene, I will definitely let you know so we can find out more about the testing that's involved in the Roswell pieces.
Yes, and you definitely need to update me on that next time I have you on.
Absolutely.
So, for real quick, plug your stuff, man. Where can people find Phantom Detectives LLC? Where can people find you?
Sure. All right. So I'll go through all my different websites. So we actually have, you want to reach Melissa Ferrazano, who's not here today. Melissa's amazing. You have to get her on the show. She's amazing. She's got her own website. She does
I'm down
readings.
for it.
She's highly accurate. Her website is psychicmediumautumn.com. That's all one word, psychicmediumautumn.com. If you want a reading done from Melissa, if you want a UFO case investigated, if you want you want to contact Rick Warner about any questions on UFOs or flying propulsions, his website is ERC2explorer.com. That is ERC2explorer.com. To contact Holly False, who's a specialist on occult symbols and spiritual beliefs, formerly from the Penn State Paranormal Research Society, now with me exclusively. Her website is hollyfaust.com, HOLLYFAUST.com. If you want to reach, we also have another team member, the world-renowned psychic lawyer, psychic explorer, Mark Anthony. Amazing guest.
Oh.
Yes, he's on our team too as a researcher. His website is afterlifefrequency.com. That's afterlifefrequency.com. To reach Phantom Detectives LLC, our website is all one word, phantomdetectives.org. That is phantomdetectives.org. And also, we're the only paranormal team in the world that owns Art Bell's former affiliate director's website, the news service of Art Bell's final show, Midnight in the Desert. We actually have exclusive ownership of it. It's darkmatternews.com and darkmatternews.com. And that is actually, we actually have Joshua Stark, who's the new newsman for us. He replaced original Art Bell affiliate director Leo Ashcraft, the original owner of Dark Matter News, Joshua Stark. So we own it, but Joshua runs it. It's a separate division, but we still use it for putting website articles on it. So it's a great website. We just rebuilt the website. It's brand new and ready to go. So we love paranormal news, and that's what we try to do is give people the best paranormal news in the world.
I love it. I love it. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show. If you wouldn't mind just hanging out in the background for about 5 minutes, we got one more ad to run, and me and Sean are going to close out the show, and then I'll be with you shortly.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, man. John, that was easiest way to say it. I think, in my opinion, one of the best shows I've had. Dude knows his stuff, especially
Definitely.
when it comes to Summerwind. He was like, there was no thinking. There was, I know this, and you're going to know that I know this.
Most definitely. And it seems like he's got a lot of knowledge of a lot of things and a lot of information as well.
No, I was super excited for this show when I first booked it, and now that the show has commenced, I've definitely got to have him back on because that was awesome.
Definitely want to hear about the UFO stuff for sure.
Oh, who doesn't?
And stuff.
Who doesn't? I love me a good UFO episode.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
But Sean, once again, thank you so much for standing in for Gwen tonight. I really do appreciate it. Gwen, we're still wishing you a speedy recovery.
Yes.
So if you guys did not see it this morning, be sure to go back and watch the Paramystic podcast with Christina Bloom. She had on Everything Vaguely Paranormal, Shelley Pruitt and Blake Smith, two of my favorite people in the paranormal. And then tonight, following this show, 9:30 p.m. EST, you have Twisted Tales with Jeremy Cotter, who has another good friend of mine, Christopher J. Brown, the medium.
Yep.
It's going to be an amazing episode. Do not miss it out. But guys, I will see you all next Wednesday, same spooky time, same spooky network, with my guest, Medium J Hill.
Awesome. Have a
Y'all
great
have a good
night,
week.
everybody.